Pam Bondi walked into the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room, carrying nothing but a thin black portfolio. In a small flash drive across from her sat federal Judge James Boasberg, respected, powerful, and completely at ease. The committee members shuffled papers. While cameras clicked in the background, no one expected what was about to happen as Bondi plugged in her flash drive. Judge Boasberg maintained his practiced judicial calm, but when the first document appeared on the screen, behind her his face changed instantly. His jaw tightened, his eyes darted to his attorney. The million-dollar deal he thought was buried forever was now displayed for everyone to see. What you're looking at, Bondi announced to the suddenly silent room, is evidence of judicial corruption at the highest level. A single signature worth millions, cases manipulated, and justice sold to the highest bidder. The chairman leaned forward, squinting at the document. "Where did you obtain this, Miss Bondi?" Before she could answer, Boasberg stood up his chair, scraping loudly against the floor. "This is a mistake. These documents are these documents." Bondi interrupted, "Are just the beginning of what will become the biggest judicial scandal in American history." No one in that room could have predicted that within 24 hours, one of America's most respected federal judges would be led away in handcuffs. Pam Bondi hadn't always been at the center of Washington power struggles. As Florida's former attorney general, she had built a reputation for pursuing corruption relentlessly regardless of political affiliation. But after leaving office, she had been quietly working as a legal consultant. Her headline, making days seemingly behind her. That changed 3 weeks ago when a sealed envelope was left on her doorstep. No return address, no fingerprints. Just a handwritten note: "The justice system is broken. You're the only one who can fix it." Inside was a flash drive containing financial records, court documents, and private emails, all pointing to Judge James Boasberg. Judge Boasberg wasn't just any federal judge appointed to U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. He had presided over high-profile national security cases, approved FISA warrants, and even served on a specialized foreign intelligence surveillance court. His decisions impacted national policy, intelligence operations, and the highest levels of government. His reputation was spotless, distinguished, fair, respected across party lines. The documents, however, told a different story. They revealed a pattern of sealed cases, private meetings, and inexplicable rulings that all benefited a single corporation, Meridian Consulting Group. The company specialized in regulatory navigation for pharmaceutical and technology clients, a fancy term for helping corporations avoid government oversight. More disturbing was the money trail: offshore accounts, shell companies, and ultimately over $1 million transferred to an investment fund that Boasberg controlled through a family trust. Bondi knew the stakes couldn't be higher. If true, this wasn't just about one corrupt judge. It threatened the integrity of the entire federal judiciary. Cases affecting national security, corporate accountability, and public safety had potentially been compromised, and going after a federal judge meant challenging the entire establishment: judges, lawmakers, and powerful corporate interests who benefited from the arrangement. For 3 weeks, she worked in complete secrecy, verifying every document, tracking money transfers, and building an airtight case. She knew she would have one chance, one hearing, present her evidence. If she failed, the documents would likely disappear, witnesses would be silenced, and Boasberg would not only remain on the bench, but would know exactly who would try to expose him. When the Judiciary Committee finally agreed to a closed hearing, everyone assumed it was a routine matter. No one, not even Boasberg himself, knew that Pam Bondi was about to detonate a bomb in the heart of the federal judiciary. The pattern begins in 2019. Bondi explained, advancing to the next slide in her presentation. The committee members leaned forward, their expressions shifting from skeptical to concerned. 7 cases involving Meridian Consulting Group's clients came before Judge Boasberg. In each instance, critical evidence was sealed. Key witnesses were barred from testifying, or cases were dismissed entirely on procedural grounds that legal experts have called unprecedented. She displayed a timeline showing the cases alongside financial transactions following each favorable ruling. We see payments moving through this network of shell companies, Caribbean transfers, Swiss accounts, and finally to Whitewater Capital Holdings, a fund that benefits Judge Boasberg through his family trust. One of the senators interrupted. "Ms. Bondi, these are serious allegations. Judge Boasberg has served with distinction for years. What proof do you have connecting him directly to these decisions beyond circumstantial?" Financial Patterns Boasberg's attorney smiled, slightly confident the questioning was turning in their favor. Bondi nodded a fair question, Senator, which brings me to Exhibit C. The screen changed to display an email exchange. The committee room fell silent as they read this email sent from Judge Boasberg's personal account to Michael Forsythe, CEO of Meridian. Consulting references a Harrison arrangement and confirms that all three matters have been handled as discussed. The dates of these emails directly correspond to three of the cases and subsequent financial transfers. Boasberg's composure finally cracked. That email has been doctored. This is a political hit job as attorney. Place a restraining hand on his arm. The committee chairman's face hardened. Judge, you'll have your chance to respond. Please continue. Mrs. Bondi, the most troubling case involves National Security Application 2021-145. Bondi continued. A classified FISA warrant request targeting Meridian's largest client, Nexlin Pharmaceuticals, during an investigation into their potential violations of export controls on biomedical research. Judge Boasberg denied the warrant despite unanimous intelligence community support. 3 weeks later, $450,000 was transferred to Whitewater Capital. Camera shutters clicked rapidly as Bondi walked the committee through document after document. With each revelation, Boasberg's face grew paler. His attorney frantically wrote notes. But perhaps the most damning evidence came to me just yesterday. Bondi said, her voice steady, a former clear, from Judge Boasberg's office, has come forward. The screen showed an affidavit with the name redacted for witness protection. This clerk has provided sworn testimony that Judge Boasberg instructed staff to route all cases involving Meridian clients directly to his docket, bypassing the random assignment system. The clerk also witnessed the judge in private meetings with Michael Forsythe on at least 6 occasions, meetings that never appeared on his official calendar. A commotion erupted at the back of the room. A man in a dark suit was escorted in by Capitol Police. The chairman gave her order. For the record, the chairman announced, the committee has just been informed that FBI agents have executed search warrants at Judge Boasberg's chambers and at the offices of Meridian Consulting Group. Boasberg stood up abruptly. This is outrageous. I demand this hearing be suspended immediately. Sit down, Judge, the chairman ordered. Ms. Bondi, do you have additional evidence to present? Yes, Mr. Chairman. The most significant evidence involves a ruling that was never made public at all. The screen displayed a draft opinion, clearly written in Boasberg style, in a case involving pharmaceutical patent enforcement. The draft showed he planned to rule against Meridian's client, but the final filed opinion reached the opposite conclusion. After what appeared to be a complete rewrite, computer forensic showed this draft was sent to an external email address associated with Meridian Consulting. 1 week before the final ruling was issued, the subsequent payment to Whitewater Capital was the largest of all. 600,000 whispers erupted throughout the room. 2 committee members were urgently conferring with staff. Reporters were slipping out to phone their editors. One final piece of evidence, Bondi said, pulling out a small recorder. This conversation was recorded legally by the cooperating witness during a meeting at Judge Boasberg's private residence. The audio quality was perfect, and Judge Boasberg's distinctive voice filled the room. The Nexlin matter is sensitive. Make sure the transfers are structured exactly as we discussed. I can't afford another close call like the Peterson case. The Oversight Committee is already asking questions. A voice responded, don't worry, James, the Whitewater arrangement is airtight. No one will ever connect the dots. The room exploded in chaos. If you're finding this exposed on judicial corruption shocking, make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories the powerful don't want you to see. Meanwhile, Judge Boasberg was on his feet, face contorted with rage. That recording has been manipulated. This is a setup. His attorney was desperately trying to restore order, demanding the authenticated source of the recording. When the hearing room doors opened again, this time 3 FBI agents entered, accompanied by a solemn-faced Department of Justice official. James Boasberg, the lead agent, announced over the commotion, I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of judicial corruption, bribery, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. Cameras flashed frantically as the once respected judge was read his rights in front of the stunned Judiciary Committee. The committee hearing had transformed into something unprecedented in American judicial history as FBI agents placed handcuffs on Judge Boasberg. Pam Bondi remained composed, gathering her documents, while cameras captured every moment of the judge's stunning downfall. I move that this hearing be suspended in light of these developments, the chairman declared, hammering his gavel over the chaos outside the hearing room. Reporters swarmed Bondi as she made her way down the Capitol steps. Miss Bondi, how long have you been building this case against Judge Boasberg? Did you work with the FBI from the beginning? are other judges involved in. This corruption scheme Bondi stopped at the microphones that had been hastily assembled camera lights illuminated her face as she addressed the nation. What you witnessed today is both a tragedy and a triumph for our justice system. She said calmly, a tragedy because a trusted judge appears to have betrayed his oath, but a triumph because our system of checks and balances worked. No one, not even a federal judge, is above the law. Meanwhile, across town, the full scope of the investigation was becoming clear. FBI teams were simultaneously executing search warrants at Meridian Consulting's offices, the homes of its executives, and at multiple financial institutions. Evidence was being secured, computers seized, and witnesses interviewed. The most dramatic scene unfolded at Meridian's headquarters, where CEO Michael Forsythe was let out in handcuffs. As employees watched in shock, when asked for comment, he shouted to reporters, "This is a politically motivated witch hunt. Judge Boasberg is a man of integrity." Back at the Department of Justice, prosecutors were already preparing for what would become one of the most significant corruption cases in American history. The evidence Bondi had gathered served as a foundation, but federal investigators had quietly been building their own case for months, unable to move forward. Without the smoking gun she provided, the Attorney General called an emergency press conference. Today's events represent a dark chapter, but also a powerful affirmation of our commitment to justice. She stated gravely, the investigation into Judge Boasberg and Meridian Consulting has revealed corruption at a scale that is deeply troubling. Thus far, we have identified over 20 cases where judicial decisions appear to have been influenced by financial incentives. She continued, I have ordered a review of all cases Judge Boasberg has presided over in the past 5 years. Additionally, I'm establishing an independent commission to examine judicial oversight procedures and recommend reforms. The revelation sent shockwaves through Washington. Congressional leaders from both parties issued statements condemning the alleged corruption and calling for immediate hearings on judicial accountability at the courthouse where Boasberg had once presided. As fellow judges released a TUR statement, we are shocked and deeply disturbed by today's allegations. The judiciary's integrity depends on the unbiased application of the law. We will cooperate fully with investigators while ensuring continued administration of justice. Legal experts flooded news networks, explaining the unprecedented nature of the case. What makes this extraordinary, explained one former federal prosecutor, is not just that a judge was arrested, but the methodical way this corruption network operated. This wasn't a momentary lapse of judgment. This was a sophisticated criminal enterprise operating within one of our most trusted institutions. As evening fell, Pam Bondi returned to her temporary office near the Capitol while the world focused on Boasberg's dramatic arrest. She was already reviewing documents related to 3 other federal judges with suspicious connections to Meridian Consulting. Her phone rang. It was the Attorney General. I don't know how you did it, Pam, but you've done this country a tremendous service, she said. We've been trying to crack this case for over a year, but couldn't get past judicial immunity. Without ironclad evidence, I was just a messenger. Bondi replied, the whistleblower who sent me those initial documents is the real hero. Any idea who it was? Bondi glanced at a note she discovered hidden in the metadata of one of the files that contained only the initials Mr. and the cryptic message, there are more, keep digging. Not yet, she answered, but I intend to find out. As Boasberg was processed at the federal detention center, his judicial robes exchanged for an orange jumpsuit, the first detailed reports of his alleged crimes were leading every newscast in America. The $1 million scheme had been exposed, and one of the nation's most powerful judges had fallen. But something told Pam Bondi this was just beginning. 3 days after Judge Boasberg's unprecedented arrest, Washington was still reeling from aftershocks that continued to reshape the political and legal landscape. The morning headlines told the story of scandal that was only growing larger. Judge Boasberg denied bail as flight risk. FBI raids 3 more judicial chambers. An expanding corruption probe. Meridian CEO Forsythe cooperating with prosecutors. Senate launches emergency hearings on judicial oversight. Supreme Court Chief Justice calls crisis gravest threat to judicial integrity in modern era. Inside a secure conference room at the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi sat at a table surrounded by federal prosecutors, FBI agents, and intelligence officials. What had begun as a solitary investigation had transformed into a multi-agency task force. Mrs. Bondi, the lead prosecutor, began. Your initial evidence has been authenticated and expanded upon. Judge Boasberg's financial records confirm everything you presented to the Judiciary Committee, but we're finding this conspiracy extends much further than anyone initially suspected. An FBI agent slid a document across the table. We've identified 3 additional federal judges with financial ties to Meridian, consulting, all following the same pattern: cases reassigned, favorable rulings, offshore payments. What about the cases themselves? Bondi asked. How many have been compromised? The Justice Department's analysis was sobering. At least 47 cases show irregular patterns consistent with potential interference. They span everything from pharmaceutical regulation to national security. Matters the most troubling involved Nexlin Pharmaceuticals' government contract for biodense research. The implications were staggering. Cases would need to be retried. Precedents established by tainted rulings would need to be reviewed. The judiciary itself would require systemic reforms to prevent similar corruption. There's something else. An intelligence officer added. Meridian wasn't just representing American corporate interests. We found connections to foreign entities, specifically Chinese and Russian investment groups, funneling money through Meridian to influence judicial outcomes in technology transfer and intellectual property cases. The room fell silent. As the true scope of the threat came into focus, this wasn't just corruption. It was potentially a matter of national security. Meanwhile, the public fallout was transforming American politics. Citizens across the political spectrum were united in their outrage. Protest signs outside federal courts nationwide read "Justice for Sale" and "Drain the Judicial Swamp." Congressional hearings were hastily organized with lawmakers from both parties competing to demonstrate their commitment to judicial accountability. Proposals for judicial ethics reform, enhanced financial disclosure requirements, and independent oversight mechanisms were introduced daily. In a rare moment of bipartisanship, the Senate unanimously passed emergency legislation establishing a special inspector general to review federal judicial conduct. Outside the political arena, the legal profession was engaged in painful self-examination. Bar associations issued urgent ethics advisories. Law schools convened special panels to discuss reforms. Federal judges voluntarily recused themselves from cases involving entities where they had even the appearance of potential conflicts. 7 days after the arrest, Pam Bondi was invited to appear on a primetime special report. The interviewer asked the question on everyone's mind: Ms. Bondi, you've exposed what may be the most significant judicial corruption scandal in American history. What motivated you to pursue this investigation when so many others seem to miss the signs? Bondi considered her answer carefully. I believe in the American justice system, not just as an ideal, but as a living, functioning reality that requires constant vigilance. When I received evidence suggesting corruption in our federal courts, I couldn't look away regardless of the risks. And what about the mysterious source who provided the initial documents? Any progress identifying this whistleblower? Not yet, Bond admitted, but whoever they've demonstrated extraordinary courage. They had access to highly sensitive information and chose to put justice above personal safety. What Bondi didn't reveal was that earlier that day she had received another anonymous package, this one containing financial records linking 2 Supreme Court justices to investment funds with troubling connections to Meridian. Consulting the board corruption potentially reached the highest court in the land. The interviewer pressed further, where does this investigation go from here, and what can ordinary citizens do in response to these revelations? This is just the beginning, Bondi replied. The task force is following every lead, reviewing every case, and will pursue justice regardless of how powerful the individuals involved may be. She looked directly into camera. As for ordinary citizens, remain engaged. Our system works only when people pay attention. The corrupt thrive in darkness and silence. 2 weeks after Buber's arrest, the first plea deals were announced. Michael Forsythe, Meridian CO, agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for reduced charges. His testimony implicated a network of judges, lawmakers, and corporate executives in a corruption scheme that had operated for nearly a decade. In a dramatic press conference, the Attorney General announced the formation of a National Judicial Integrity Commission with broad powers to investigate and recommend reforms. To everyone's surprise, she named Pam Bondi as its chairperson. Ms. Bondi has demonstrated the courage, integrity, and analytical skills needed to lead this critical effort. The Attorney General stated her work has already begun the process of restoring faith in our judicial system. As for Judge James Boasberg's legacy was permanently transformed. The once respected jurist now faced decades in prison. His formal indictment included 38 counts of corruption, bribery, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. The Judicial Conference had already begun proceedings to strip him of his pension and formally remove him from the bench 1 month after the initial hearing. Pam Bondi returned to the same committee room where it all began. This time, she was presenting comprehensive recommendations for Judicial reform, what we discovered in the Boasberg case, was not just one corrupt judge, but vulnerabilities in the system itself. She explained these reforms will enhance transparency, strengthen ethical guidelines, and ensure meaningful accountability. After her testimony, a junior staff member approached her with an envelope. "Someone asked me to give you this," he said before quickly walking away. Inside was a single note checked the Whitewater Fund's connection to Supreme Court case Music 211452. This goes all the way to the top. Mr. Bondi recognized the initials from the metadata in the original files. Her mysterious source was still out there, still providing breadcrumbs leading deeper into the corruption network. That evening, as the sun set over Washington, Bondi sat in her office reviewing the Supreme Court case. Mentioned in the note, it involved patent protection for a revolutionary cancer treatment, a case with billions of dollars at stake. Her phone buzzed with news alerts. Former Judge Boasberg agrees to cooperation deal with prosecutors. Senate unanimously confirms new judicial ethics watchdog. Nexalin Pharmaceutical stock plummets as federal investigation expands. Justice was being served, but the work was far from over. The corruption exposed by that small black flash drive had tentacles reaching into every branch of government, untangling. It would take years. Bondi closed the file and looked at the photo on her desk the moment when FBI agents led Judge Boasberg away in handcuffs. It was a shocking image, but also a hopeful one. No matter how powerful, no one was above the law. If you found the story of justice and accountability compelling, please subscribe, and share to help us continue bringing you the truth that powerful forces don't want exposed. Together we can shine a light on corruption and protect our democratic institutions. The fight for judicial integrity would continue tomorrow night tonight. She allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. One corrupt judge was in handcuffs, and the iodized system was finally awakening to the threats within. It wasn't complete victory, but it was a beginning, and sometimes beginnings were the most important part of the story.